IPMNation.com.
Live from the Outpost Studios in Columbus, Ohio, you're listening to All Natural Being with Brian Brawdy. Brought to you by IPMNation.com. Get ready for the gong heard round the world.
This is not a drill.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All-Natural Being. Warning, All-Natural Being with Brian Brawdy is designed to shake your sense of self to the core.
It's full contact psychology with an empowering twist, a philosophical loofah for your soul.
For those of you not ready or comfortable releasing your inner superhuman, listener discretion is advised.
Here's your host,
Brian Brawdy.
Good evening. Nice to be hanging out with you. Thank you so very much. Welcome, I should say. And thank you for stopping by the #1 rated show here on IPMNation.com, episode 274 of the Gong Heard Round the World. You're in to All Natural Being. Broadcast as it happens here from the studios, Columbus, Ohio. Facebook for Fly on the Wall video. Always live from the Outpost, with rebroadcast on iTunes and iHeartRadio. And I thank you very much for that. Greetings wherever you are, here in the Garden of the Mortals. Top of the day from the truest parts of your mind. Because life, it's your labyrinth. It's your table to run. It's your shot at running that table. That's why we're always putting your heart's highest priority top of the list. Placing your primal scream, regardless of your critics. We're placing your primal scream front and center in your life. We're reinstalling and reinstating the true wit and wisdom of your inner whisper, because it's time to reboot your robust, to find your ferocious, to out-brutal the brutal that can be the cut and shuffle that fate deals you on a daily basis, and to bring your own bold once and for all. But before I hit it this evening, hello to my friends here in the United States and Canada, Mexico, the UK, my good friends from Ecuador, China, the Philippines, Brazil, India, Australia, Germany, Italy, France, Turkey, Japan, Singapore, Sweden, Israel, South Africa, Puerto Rico, Kenya, the Netherlands. To those joining us from all over the globe, it's great to have you with us. I'm always truly fired up to be driving your bandwagon, to be your biggest fan, to be avidly you. Let me ask you, are you tired of being institutionalized by the intentions of another? Convicted by the constructs of another? Remanded to a prison of rhetoric? Yourself or rhetoric from another? Me too. And that's why it's time to mortal up. So what do you say? Let's go kick in some doors. And again, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. We're going to hop here into the thread in just a minute. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit before we do, about a post that I put up earlier over on Facebook. And it basically just says, we can treat everything as a no parking zone. When it comes to the critic spew, when it comes to all those other things in our life, and we're like, oh, I would do this and I would do that if it weren't for, what everyone else thinks. I would do this or I would do that. I would put my heart's highest priority top of my list. But given what everyone thinks, I'm just not up for it anymore. I'm just not up for the battle. So I'd rather just go with the static quo. I'd rather go with the flow. And then what I said, well, when it comes to that critic spew, you could just say, no parking anytime. You're not going to allow, right? I talk all the time about drive-by rhetoric, right? You're just not going to be riddled with another person's rhetoric. You're not going to be riddled with that critic spew. You go, no thanks, no parking zone, not going to tolerate it, not going to take it anymore. I'm just not going to listen to all the alleged experts telling me why it is I shouldn't be happy, why it is I shouldn't feel connected, Why it is I shouldn't put my heart's highest priority top of the list. Why it is I shouldn't. Why can't I? What's wrong with me placing my primal scream front and center in my life? So if we just have that same attitude as that sign I found today over at a local, I call them Stop and Robs, leftover from law enforcement, the little drive-up grocery stores. There's a little sign there, no parking anytime. Then when it comes to your critic spew, when it comes to all the negative rhetoric, and it can be from yourself, rhetoric that you habitually repeat in your own mind. Maybe that's the rhetoric we're talking about. Most certainly don't give that a parking space. Don't let that park in your mind. And when it comes to outside rhetoric, when it comes to the spew of other people, don't let that in either. And the litmus test for it is always, is it putting your heart's highest priority top of your list? Yes or no? If it is, you let it in. If it isn't, hit the deadbolt. Don't let it in. Don't give it a parking spot. All right, let me jump over, say hello to Sarah. Good evening. Thank you, my friend. Nice to see you. Josephine, good evening. Thank you for joining us here. David Ray Bowman, greetings from I-5 North. I hope all is well. Thank you. Believe me, I think of you all the time. Dana Lee, greetings from Rochester, New York. Thank you so very much for joining us. I think of you, David, when you were trying to teach me one time about the fade. So thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it. Also to Marcellus, good evening. Matt Connerton, good evening as well. Lee is watching. Lee, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the Lee words of late. If you haven't heard about Lee words, maybe Lee will go ahead and throw the link up into it. But he's just a copywriter extraordinaire. And he's started putting up some audio of late as to what you could do if you were writing your own copy. Or it's really just a great operating manual. If you're sitting down on a blank page and you want to create the ability to communicate something with words, he's got a great little operating manual on how to do just that, right? How to instill your passion in the ears and the minds and the hearts of the person or persons reading what you wrote. So it's always great to be able to hang out with Lee as well. As Dana Lee says, yep, my hardest critic. Isn't it always that case? Isn't it always the case, Dana Lee, that when we work on that self-talk, and I'm guilty of it as well, because sometimes talk about a loop, right? It all depends on how we get in and interrupt that loop. But it's still rhetoric, and it's drive-by rhetoric. And instead of being riddled with it, instead of going, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not supposed to be happy. Maybe I'm not supposed to be successful. Maybe I'm not supposed to be dialed in. Well, just listen to the critic's view and let it go. Or you could go, no, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. Whether I hear it from a megaphone from the outside or I hear from the mirror when I look in, I'm just not going to tolerate that anymore. Dana Lee, yes, that's a great. Lee, if you would you put up a link to that real quick if you're still with us, where people can get onto your SoundCloud page and hear all about Lee words? And then what we're talking about this evening is let's just not give them a parking space. And I know you're thinking, well, it's like handicap parking spaces. People pull in the handicap parking spaces all the time, and they don't belong there. So I'm not really thinking about that, but don't give it a parking space. Don't fall for the rhetoric. Oh, shucks. Oh, here's tomorrow's preview, Lee words. Thank you so much. Oh, great. Janile, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on All Natural Being. All right, Lee, a little bit of a preview for tomorrow. Very cool. Thank you, sir. Janile. Thank you for joining us here on All Natural Being. Oh, let me give out, I'll go ahead and do this. We'll give out the number, 833-462-9368. 833-GO-BE-YOU. You get a chance to give us a call. I'd love to know what you're thinking. And we're talking this evening really about what it takes. 833-462-3968, toll free, 833-GO-BE-YOU. And we're talking what it takes to inoculate ourselves from the rhetoric of another. And why I think it's so very important, especially in this day and age. We talk all the time about unleash your legendary, right? We talk about your potential. We talk about all human potential, just this side of infinity. But there's this epidemic. I said to Henry earlier that I thought of it as I was out for a run. I talk about the epidemic of the ego as an octopus, right? With its toxic tentacles, if you'll allow me to continue with the letter riff, right? The ego is an octopus with its toxic tentacles working its way into every area of your life. Well, what if the ego is simply an operating system that it's either run its course, or you could say you give it more authority than it really should have? Maybe it's just an operating system, right? Just like you have a computer, you have all kinds of different software that you run on your computer. You don't leave one particular piece of software running the whole shooting match. Maybe when we talk about the difference between illuminating and eliminating, because no one's talking about eliminating the ego, but the ego's all too ready to say, oh yeah, please park right here. Here's a parking space. Please let that rhetoric in to ricochet around in your mind, the binge thinking. I saw another sign today, and I took a picture of it. Maybe I'll put it up tomorrow, but I saw this sign that was really kind of interesting to me. It said, don't forget, cigarette butts are litter too. When I thought, okay, how many times you've been out somewhere driving around and someone takes a cigarette butt and flicks it out the window? And this sign, I guess it must be in a particular area. They got tired of picking up cigarette butts, so they go, don't forget, cigarette butts are litter too. And then I thought, well, that's a lot about the way some of this rhetoric works in the human mind. It doesn't have to be a big, 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation dedicated. It doesn't have to be the Gettysburg Address. It could be something as little as a cigarette butt, a little bit of rhetoric, like, you can't do that. You don't deserve to be happy. What are you thinking? As Lee says, the ego is a shortcut to thinking. I like that one. Thank you very much, Lee. But it's the ego that's like a maitre d' going, oh, no, you can park here. Come on in, park here, free parking. Come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. And then you wonder how we're just riddled with binge thinking. The most authentic parts of ourself are busy juggling all the different fires that the ego wants us to put out, all the different opinions, all those different things that we're supposed to be paying attention to. But what if you just decide one day, no, I don't think I'm gonna post a no parking sign, no parking anytime. And then ultimately you decide. You're like a cognitive concierge. You decide what comes in, right? You're like a maitre d'. You decide what comes in. And I think that's so important, and I'll tell you why. I think it's so important. Because if we continue to be enslaved, not by the big thing now is everyone's saying, oh, it's a chronic masculinity that's going to destroy the planet. No, it isn't. It's chronic sensitivity that's going to destroy the planet. And if we continue to be enslaved by this chronic sensitivity, then the mechanistic future run by algorithms of the 21st century, we're going to need to possess some pretty decent grit to be able to stand. And I've talked before about homo ingenius. I've talked before about embattled by the barrage of the status quo. Homo ingenius is going to be the evolution of that human mind, where we're not going to be tied anymore to the toxic tentacles of the ego as octopus, that we're going to outgrow our dependence on the committee vote, on the mashugana of the marketplace. Because ultimately, there's a fork in the road. You have one choice, superhuman or superfluous. I wish it were more detailed than that, but it really isn't. You're going to be a superhuman, or you're going to be fodder. You're going to be a superhuman, or you're going to be superfluous. Because as the 21st century progresses on, homo ingenius will be those individuals that put their heart's highest priority top of their list and move to make an impact day in and day out. And if not, then you'll have no ability to stand up to AI. And you'll have to look at your surrendered sovereignty. Because really, when someone says, oh, I'm offended, oh, I'm outraged, oh, I'm this, I'm that, what you're admitting is that your critics, Trojan horse, you let them in, and then their rhetoric just ricochets around in your mind. I've said before in other shows, it's like, you'd let someone in through the front door with 2 cans of spray paint, and you'd let them put graffiti all over your house, all over your refrigerator. Oh, don't forget the couch. Oh, you can put some graffiti on the dog. I got a white lab if you want to cover him in dark blue spray paint. You would no more do that, but we'll stand by. We'll be marionettes where people get to play us like a puppet. We become a hypochondriacs where every time someone says something that they think, oh, I'm going to get them, that we take it as hypercritical. We become outraged. We become offended. I asked in a conversation today, what's derogatory? If you don't decide something is derogatory, is it really? If someone says something to you, don't you get to decide if it's derogatory? I don't think it really matters what their intention is. Don't you get to decide if something's offensive? If you're outraged by something? Give us a call, 833-462-3968. It's toll free, 833-462-3968, 833-GO-BE-YOU. And all we're talking about this evening is that don't give people a parking space in your mind. And most certainly don't give the critics a parking space in your mind. Have the ability in that particular moment and all of time to go, yeah, that's your opinion. I'm not a pincushion for your opinion. I don't have to buy into that. And instead of being embattled by the barrage of the status quo, right? Instead of being just absolutely beaten back by everyone's opinion, what do you stand for? What do you want out of life? What do you hope to achieve in the time that you have left? Thank you, Josephine. Very much. Nice to see you. And then maybe if we just remember that every time we want to say, oh, I'm outraged or I'm offended, that's just our attacker's Trojan horse. It's just the malware that they drop off in our minds. But then we have to admit, okay, great. Well, I am a marionette. I am being played like a puppet. I am a hypochondriac. Just because they said that it is this way, that I'm going to surrender my cognitive sovereignty. I'm going to go ahead and fold my hand. I'm going to go ahead and cash in my chips. And I think that's why it's so important. I read this report today. And let me see if I can. I think it was called The Future of Employment. And it's absolutely staggering. A couple brainiacs got together to write this report not too long ago. And it talks about all the different jobs that will replace. Matter of fact, maybe I'll download or I'll get a copy of the report so we'll go over it tomorrow night on the show. We'll read some of these jobs, but absolutely unbelievable as to artificial intelligence and the human jobs it's going to replace. I'll tell you a quick little story. Probably 10 years ago now, I was flying somewhere, don't remember where. And I remember it happened on United Airlines because I had, frequent flyer miles or whatever on United Airlines. And I walked up and I was, no doubt, knowing me, running late, right, rushing to get to my flight. So I go up and I say to the flight attendant, could you check me in, please? And she goes, oh, sir, we have these new kiosks. You need to get out of line and go back and work the kiosk. I said, in fact, I'm not going to get out of line. I'm not going to go back and work the kiosk. Well, I'm here right now. This is the counter. You're on that side of the counter where the computer is. I'm on this side of the counter where the ticket holder is. So why don't we make a deal, right? Why don't you just go ahead, check me in, and I'll get out of your hair. And she, in a very condescending tone, she said, sir, in a tone that was about to change, by the way. But in any event, she said, sir, the kiosks are behind you. You have to use those. And I go, no, I don't. And let me tell you why I'm not going to. Because the moment they perfect these kiosks, you're going to be out of a job. The moment that these kiosks rise to being intelligent enough to make sure that you're managing a Pizza Hut somewhere in the Southwest, you're out of a gig here at the airline. And she just was taken aback, and she stopped. And I said, well, let me tell you as my experience in television reporters that we used to have all kinds of cameramen, camerawomen on the floor. Now it's all robots. The moment they figure out how to perfect, so they don't have to worry about you being sick, they don't have to pay you overtime, they don't have to worry if you're going to show up for your gig, right? The moment they're able to perfect these kiosks, you are out of a gig. And the flight attendant reached over. Let me say hello real quick to Kelly. Kelly, thank you for joining us. Zoe, also, thank you for joining us here at All Natural Being. She reached over, grabbed my ticket, and worked the computer a little bit, came back, and she had upgraded me to first class. Because I think in that moment, having never read before The Future of Employment, having never read that, you and I are in the battle of our lives. Used to be everyone and their brother would think, oh, and their sister would think, oh, don't worry, there'll always be attendants to pump gas. Till they perfected gas pumps. Oh, there'll always be a need for bank tellers. Till they perfected ATMs. Oh, don't worry about that. Grocery store clerk, get that gig. That's a good gig. You know, you can get hours, probably get medical and dental. And, oh, now you go in, and the majority, at least where I live, a majority of the checkout lanes, you have to check yourself out. You have to go up and scan your own stuff and bag your own stuff and pay your own money and get your own receipt and everything else. So there's another example of how artificial intelligence is going to be putting some of us out of a gig. And the people that will rise to the occasion, the people that right now are saying, no, I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'm not going to surrender my sovereignty to an algorithm. My attitude about myself, my personal attitude, is that I'm not going to let this happen to me. And then, so let the masses, all the people that will end up one day being fodder, what are you and I supposed to do about it? Let's be honest, right? We want to be sympathetic. We want to be helpful. But what are we supposed to do about it? What are we supposed to do? We can refuse to surrender our cognitive sovereignty. And we can remember that in the future, the people that are going to make it are the ones that put their heart's highest priority top of the list, that make creativity in the moment paramount in their lives. And I believe, as you've heard me say before, if you've watched this show, we haven't needed Vanna White for 10 years. Hysterical. Kelly, you're absolutely right. Hey, I just learned how I can do it. There you go. Absolutely right. We haven't needed Vanna White in 10 years. But yet, she remains. I think it was Pat Sajak. Probably haven't needed him in a decade either, and he's still around. But what are you and I going to do to rise to the challenge that is artificial intelligence? What are we going to do? We're going to put our heart's highest priority top of the list. That's what we're going to do. And in the mechanistic future of the 21st century, you simply need the grit to reinvent yourself. Give me a call, toll free, 833-GO-BU, 833-462-3968. Give me a holler if you have an example. And people, and believe me, good evening, Mike. Let me say hello to Mike real quick. Also to Janice. Janice, thank you so very much. Hello. Thank you for watching. All Natural Being, or thank you for hanging here in the thread at least. We're talking about what's going to happen, or what's happening right now in this day and age, when we're passing the torch from human gettings to human beings, or as what I'm calling now, Homo ingenious. Homo ingenious. The people that decide to put their heart's highest priority top of the list, and they're not going to listen to anyone try to talk them out of it. Those will be the people that when it comes time to pass the torch, and it's happening all around us, when it comes time to being upgraded, philosophically and physiologically. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you, brother. When it comes to accepting that torch, you and I will be ready. For those that decide that they're going to bring their brains and their brawn and face the AI threat, square their boosted shoulders, and have their own way, that's how we'll be able to stand up to the mechanization that's just around the corner. 833-462-3968. Josephine, thank you very much. Sometimes it's hard for me to type all those things in. Thank you very much. 833-GO-BU. It's toll free if you want to give me a call. Give me an example. So what I'm simply suggesting is that there's a cognitive revolution. And I know other people have used the term, but for me, cognitive revolution means we're going to have to decide between the human beings and the human gettings. We're going to have to decide against the term Homo sapiens and Homo ingenious, where we work to put our heart's highest priority top of the list, and then we never become fodder. And when the masses decide to simply capitulate, when the masses decide, that's okay, I'll let the committee vote dictate my life. I'll buy into the binge thinking, the mashugana of the marketplace. I'll buy into this repertoire of rhetoric. Those will be the people that aren't going to fare very well as the 21st century moves on. Those are going to be the people that look back with hampered heads and hampered hearts, and go, I never saw it coming. What happened? Sarah says, laziness contributes to this. We automate more and more, but you can't find people to do hard work. Firewood, hay, manual labor. Oh, you mean like hanging out at your place for the weekend? Well, I've often said, when people go, oh, what do you do when you go up there? I go, I just try to work off of my bed and breakfast fee. But people are getting lazier and lazier as a result of AI or just out of necessity. And I guess, Sarah, you raise a valid point. I'm not saying that all artificial intelligence is bad, right? There are some things that we can look at AI and go, they've been great in terms of the fields of medicine and some of the things that it's allowed us to get on top of in terms of illnesses and disease and the like. But I'm talking more about what happens. And why would we want to be in a position to have AI replace us? Oh, that's certain. Well, you know what? There's no chance of me missing when a call comes in. Good evening. Welcome to All Natural Being. Who's this?
Hey, B. This is Janice.
Hey, Janice. How are you? Nice to hear your voice.
Well, I don't know about that. I have a terrible voice. But, hey, I think, we are where we are today largely in part of all the social media.
Okay.
Right? People post all this stuff
okay.
because it's easy for them to just sit behind a computer, an iPad, or a cell phone, say what they want to say for the world to hear, and then they don't, which half the stuff they wouldn't say to a person in front of, in person.
I agree.
And I think we just have to ignore it, basically. I mean, I see so much out there, and I go, yeah, I'm not even going to buy into it. I mean, we know who we are. We know what we think and feel, and the vitriol that's out there in this day and age is atrocious, and it wasn't like that before social media.
And you think social media is giving people a little more courage? I call it the courage of both thumbs, right? They're busy texting. They got both thumbs working, and they're pretty courageous when they have to hit enter. Do you think that social media gives them a sense of courage they don't normally possess? Right.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, because anybody can do it, but nobody has to look somebody else in the face after they've said these horrible.
Right.
And so I courageous. I don't know. I don't know that I would call it
okay.
courageous. And I think you touched on this in past shows. People think that they become. Oh, I can't even, but like they would never say the things that they say in person, but they can sit behind technology and spew all this vitriol. And I think that, everybody that's out there reading everything or hearing anything, you have to just go, I just got to ignore it.
And Janice, let me ask you.
And like you were talking about last night, how words offend people.
Right.
I blame social media for that as well.
Okay.
Right? What people, you say this, play this little thing on social media and everybody takes offense to it. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, it was nothing. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely makes sense. And I would say that I'm beginning to think that maybe it's not social media as much as it is a technology, because think about it, Janice. You ever been behind the wheel of a car, you see someone with road rage, and then you either pull over or you go to get out of the car, and then all of a sudden they're not raging anymore? Or I often equate it like if you were at a grocery store and you had a shopping cart and someone ran into you, would you have that same amount of rage one-on-one that you'd have behind the wheel of a car or behind the keyboard of a computer? So maybe it's social media, maybe it's technology that gives us a sense of, you don't like the word courage, but gives us a sense of maybe rudeness that we wouldn't normally have.
There's no accountability.
There's no accountability.
They don't have to be. There's no accountability. You know what I mean?
So when we talk about when we talk about changing the way it's going now, right? What do you see the answer being? If it's whether it's social media or you're behind the wheel of a car. Let me say quickly, Janice, good evening to Alan. Alan Black, thank you for joining us. Hello to you as well. What do you think the remedy is, sis? Is there anything that we're able to do when it comes to, because you hear me all the time talk about, hotheads wrapped in thin skin. But for some people, it's impossible for them to ignore the attack. I've made a life out of ignoring verbal attacks, but how are other folks going to be able to do it?
Well, I think we've gone so far down the rabbit hole. Really, everybody needs to go off the grid, and I know that's not a good thing to say because you do your show. You know what I mean? You use social media for your show, but I think it just when people post like all this stuff out there, it enrages people because they're reading it and they either believe it or they take offense to it or whatever. So I don't, it wasn't like this when we were growing up. It just wasn't.
Well,
you were talking about last night. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, back in the day growing up when we had CB radios, even with CB radios, you would say what you'd think, but it wasn't just, everyone wasn't loaded for bear. Everyone wasn't. It's almost as if it's become cool to be outraged. It's become cool to be offended. Yes. It's become cool to be maligned.
I agree. And, and I think the political divide in this country is just, it amplifies it astronomically. And I think that is a sad thing because think about way back when, whoever we voted for, it was a private matter.
Sure.
We never talked politics.
Right.
We never did. That was just one of the things. You don't talk. People would go. There's a reason that when you go to vote, that it's private.
Sure.
Because there's a reason for that. And back in the day, we never had the conversation. Oh my gosh! Nowadays, if you're a Republican, you're shunned.
Sure.
Because anything bad that somebody could think about a Republican, they look at that across the spectrum and lump all Republicans into that when they don't take the time to go, why is it you're a conservative? Well, somebody might be a conservative because they don't believe in a woman's right to choose.
Sure.
Has nothing to do, that's totally different than separating children at the borders.
Sure.
And I know I'm getting way off.
No, that's okay. Because I think what you'd agree, sis, is that it goes both ways. Because if you look at Alan Dershowitz, who I happen to respect tremendously. As a matter of fact, when they said he's no longer welcome in Martha's Vineyard, I said, well, you're welcome to come and hang out at my pool, right? So it's the way Republicans treat Democrats, the way Democrats treat Republicans. And I just want to say in the thread here, Dennis, thank you, Dennis, for joining us, says people can disassociate their actions from their consequences or for the consequences of those actions. Janice, and also let me say hi to Gabriel listening. Let me say hello to him. Also, Alan Black says it's worse than listening to a lie. And then Lee says, to what degree, though, can we compare people who become unemployed because of advances in AI to, say, people who insisted of staying in the railroad? Great point. Staying in the railroad, right? And then go, okay, but now that we know that that's industry complaining about it, and then they changed what was the basis of transportation. I know I'm a pain. It's not a pain at all. But I think that's what I'm saying. And I'm having a difficult time getting getting your whole post in here. Industrial complaining about losing jobs because of highway-based transport. I know I'm a pain. Not a pain at all. And what I'm simply saying is I thought about it today while I was out for a run, when we talk about artificial intelligence, and Jan, bringing it back to what you were saying. Alan Black says respect of the elders is no longer available.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also say hello to Henry.
When did we lose that? When did that derail? I mean, no pun intended, but we have it's not even just the elders anymore. We have no respect for somebody that has a different opinion than ours. And that is very, very sad. We have no respect for it. At least that's how it plays out on social media. You say one thing that somebody doesn't agree with on,
Sure.
regardless of the what side of the political spectrum you're on, there's no respect for other people's opinions anymore. There just isn't.
And that's when we talk about, hotheads wrapped in thin skin. And you look at Dershowitz.
Yep.
Again, has written a book against the case for impeaching President Trump. And as he says, he's been ostracized. He had a woman saying that if he was at the party, she'd stab him in the heart.
I know. I don't get that. I don't get it. I don't get how we became such an angry society.
Well, I like Henry's take. Henry just says
that.
now, Janice, that we've lost respect for ourselves, right? And if we lose respect for ourselves, then it's easy to lose respect for other people. But someone's going to say, I'm going to stab him in the heart because of a political opinion? Just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't to me, too. And, when I first started seeing all the nastiness out on Facebook, and it's coming from a lot of my lifelong friends.
Sure.
I didn't want to unfriend them,
right.
but I had to unfollow them because it hurt my heart to see how enraged they would get over just minuscule things. To me, something that was like, I cannot believe somebody's getting this enraged over it, but it was daily.
Sure.
These my lifelong friends, not Facebook friends, lifelong friends that I was friends with on Facebook. I didn't want to unfriend them because I didn't want to hurt them, but I didn't want to listen. It hurt my heart to see their anger day in and day out. So I just unfollowed them. So I don't see that in my news feed anymore.
Okay. So then what you're saying...
But I haven't unfriended them.
Right. You're just unfollowing them so that you're not going to be subject to whatever it is. That makes perfect sense to me. Right. Although I have to say, Jan, before I let you go, that Dennis wanted to make mention of the fact that no one is critically thinking for themselves, just spouting programmed responses. Dennis, I think...
Right. That is so true.
Isn't that true, though?
That is so true. That is so true. No truer words were spoken. That is absolutely spot on. And just spouting out this programmed responses. But again, programmed, what's the benefit of that program? And I think people are just lonely. And they're looking at, if they can be outraged, what was it that Oscar Wilde, way back when, said that the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. Right? So he was talking as being an author. But what would the old saying was, any publicity is good publicity.
No such thing as bad press. Right.
Not.
Well, and I thank you for the call, Janice, and we'll continue to talk about that. And it's because you do give everyone an option. You say, okay, because I'm always asking, what's something we can do right now? How can we make it work? And you say, I don't want to unfriend them because they're still technically my friends, but I'm going to unfollow them, so I'm not subject to their riffs. I'm not subject to their rhetoric, but I'm not going to be the one that loses a friendship because they're a hothead wrapped in thin skin.
I love them.
Sure.
But I just don't, it hurts me to see them so angry.
Sure.
And I just don't want to do it.
I think that's great advice, Janice. So thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for calling into the show. Call back anytime.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Janice. Thanks so much. I love you too. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye now. All right, so what do you think? Janice has come up with a little bit of a tactic. Maybe we don't unfriend them. She's a lot nicer. She got the niceness, because you'll see people on the internet go, well, if you believe in this, just unfriend me right now. And I go, well, there you go. Ding. I need to clear some space. Ding. Oh, well, if you believe, ding. Oh, if you don't believe, ding. Okay, unfriend. And sometimes you can get 4 or 5 new spaces a day here on Facebook. Right? Because, as Jan said, everyone is so upset. Everyone is so enraged. But I like what she says. She doesn't unfriend them, right? Doesn't want to hurt their feelings, but she's just not going to listen, right? She's not going to be subject to drive-by rhetoric. She's not going to be subject to be riddled in their rhetoric. So she just unfollows them. It's a great idea. Henry says, it is amazing all the angry, negative energy we will expend on things we can't control, and how little energy we invest on the things we can control. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the second part of it, Henry. Maybe what it is that it's so easy to target that energy. But, and as Sarah said earlier, maybe we're just lazy. We don't want to target that energy in a way that can really make a powerful impact. So it's like we can just go ahead and squander that potential. We can squander that bandwidth, picking all these little fights, right? Saying all these things on social media. And good golly, the last couple days on social media, about the only place that's safe to hang out from time to time if I have to go online is with my friends that are libertarian, right? You can't afford just some of the downright negativity. And then you think, okay, well, we're talking about public siphons, right? So how someone could let that be so important in their lives. I don't know. Dennis says it's easier to blame than to take responsibility. Absolutely agree, Dennis. And I think that's what happens to folks. But ultimately, the responsibility is on, as we know, is on you and I. And I think when you look at all of the negativity, when you look at all of the anger, what are people so angry about? Well, they don't have their heart's highest priority top of their list. Because they don't have their primal scream front and center in their minds. They'll scream at anybody about anything. They want to scream, right? They want to be able to let out the energy. As Henry says, it's an energy that if we could use that energy to put our heart's highest priority top of our list. What is it? I think it's in the Gospel of Thomas. If you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's a sense of a metastasizing period where if you don't use your energy to put your heart's highest priority top of the list, that energy turns against you. Maybe so. I don't know. What do you think? Henry's saying they're in a state of fear. I would agree with you. And in addition to being in a state of fear, they're just disappointed with where they are at this particular moment in all of time. So it's better to be outraged. It's better to just to buy into all that anger than it is to say, let me take that energy, redirect it, just like a martial art, right? Redirect your attacker and use that energy, use that mental bandwidth to put my heart's highest priority top of the list. Alan Black says, people are ashamed to build on love because everything is so perverted today. And I think, Alan, if you look at it, you're absolutely correct. That people are ashamed to build on love. And then you wonder, are they so mad? And this is what I said to Janice earlier. Are they so mad at everyone else because they're mad ultimately at themselves? And that the love that we would want to build on, which is why I say to all people all the time, well, take 20 minutes a day. Be a little hedonistic. Be a little narcissistic. Be a little selfish. There'll be plenty of time. There's 72 20-minute chunks in your day. There'll be plenty of time to be altruistic. There'll be plenty of time to take care of everyone around you. But for 1/72nd of your day, maybe it's before you go to bed tonight. Maybe it's when you get up tomorrow morning. Be your own cheerleader. Be your own best friend. Be your own biggest fan. Be thankful. We had to pick our 800 number. One of the two that we chose was Go Be You. 833-462-3968. Toll free if you want to give us a call here in the closing minutes. But go be you. And maybe because people, I don't know, Alan, what do you think? Henry, what do you think? Janice, what do you think? Dennis, what do you think? Maybe because people are so opposite of being who they really are, they're just pissed. They're just ticked off. You talk about walking on eggshells. Everyone's so mad because maybe they just feel like they've turned their back on themselves and maybe not even conscious of it. But as we talk about enhanced humans, when we talk about what's going to happen in the future, when we talk about the cognitive revolution that's going on around us, it will be those individuals, the homo ingenious you've heard me talk about, upgraded philosophically and physiologically. It'll be those people that bring their brains and their brawn that are able to stand We hear all the time, we've talked about this evening, artificial intelligence, and I'm thinking that's just like human beings. We haven't perfected all natural intelligence, so now we're going to go to artificial intelligence. But I would say again, instead of hampering your head, instead of hampering your heart, if Marcellus is still with us, instead of chop blocking your cognitive ability, there's a cognitive revolution going on. And you and I can decide to get ahead of the curve and be one of those homo ingenious. Be one of those enhanced humans by paying attention to this particular moment and all the time. Not being a human getting, not having our sense of self dictated by all the things in the marketplace, all the things going on around us, all the baubles, all the bells, all the whistles. As John says, normal and common has become abhorrent to us that are awake. When the power of love overcomes, I got to figure out how to use my own phone. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, we will know peace. I would absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. As does Dana. As does Henry. Thank you, Henry, very much. Alan says, they're only consuming what they reflect back as time passes. He talks about changing that residue. That's a great word, residue. Was it Aldous Huxley? If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to you as it is, infinite. Maybe that's some of that residue. That over time, they've just turned their backs on themselves. We talked earlier about that. Kelly, if you're still here, what do you think? Janelle, if you're still here. Sarah, what do you think? Lee, what do you think? I finally can see your whole post now, Lee. So let me do it one more time. To what degree, though, can we compare people who become unemployed because of advances in AI to, say, people who insisted in staying in the railroad industry, complaining about losing jobs because of highway-based transport? So what he's saying is be mindful, right? Take advantage of the situation at hand and going, what am I going to do to be one of these enhanced humans? What am I going to do to win this cognitive revolution? If they're passing the torch, what am I going to do? And as Lee puts very succinctly, are you going to sit around and complain and go, nope, this is all I know, I'm going to stick with this? Or are you going to find a way of being on the winning end of the cognitive revolution? As Henry says, it's all about the mirror's reflection. I would absolutely agree. Thank you, Lee. But it's what's cool about Lee's quote, and what's cool about what John and Henry and Dana are now saying, be mindful of the words you speak. And that you as an individual have to be that energy that you seek. And I love that because, Dana, in order to be able to seek it, you got to know what you're talking about, right? It takes one to know one. Well, that energy attracts like. But to Lee's point, are we just going to sit around and let the cognitive revolution batter us around, chop block us to such a degree that when it comes time for us to be able to take a stand, it's too late? Or are we going to say, no, we're going to bring our brains and our brawn. We're going to be a part of the homo ingenious that's able to rise to any occasion, that's able to out-brutal the brutal that we talk about every night here. And it begins by not giving negativity a parking spot in your mind. No parking anytime. Your negativity or the negativity from the crowd. John says, the more time we spend in that mindful space, the easier it becomes to remain in that space. Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed, John. And that's when I think we talk all the time about gratitude. Gratitude for your grit. Gratitude for your agility. Gratitude for your stamina. Gratitude for your natural resources. Those things that you're ultimately capable of, but maybe the residue of time kind of blocks your perception. Thank you, Alan, very much. The residue of time obscures you from seeing. That's why I talk all the time about amnesia. And I know for the people that know my story, we joke a little bit about amnesia. I get a nice little bracelet and everything else. You know what I mean? So if anything happens and I get lost, then people go, oh, you don't remember who you are? Well, there's your information right there on your bracelet, right? We kind of talk about that, but we're all in the middle of a philosophical amnesia. Maybe covered in that same residue that Alan was speaking of. We're covered in that residue. And as Dana says, battling with that, my self-talk, but I'm aware. So that's half the battle. Well, maybe the other half of the battle, Dana, is removing that residue. Removing those things about us that are opaque. Doing what we can to remove that amnesia. No more amnesia. It's no fun, I got to tell you. No more philosophical amnesia. Remember who you ultimately are. And stop giving up parking spaces. It's your mind. They're your parking spaces. You control them. Makes me think back to the days in Chicago where people would shovel the sidewalk and they'd put their folding chairs. They'd shovel out during a snowstorm. They'd shovel out a parking space and they'd put the chair there. Because, that's my space. I shoveled it out. That's mine. And people would put the chair there. Right? Well, if you're going to shovel out the space, put a chair there. Don't let anyone else park in your space. No parking anytime. If it's critic spew, if it's negativity, if it's not working to put your heart's highest priority top of your list, 86 it. Say no thank you. Don't sign for it. Put the deadbolt up and secure your own parking spaces. They're your parking spaces. All right, I think you get my point. We're going to go ahead and run. Thank you. Janice, thank you for calling. For everyone here in the thread, thank you so very much. For joining us here at All Natural Being. That's why I have friends and acquaintances. Alan, I absolutely agree. Dennis, thank you so much for your comments this evening. Truly appreciate it. If it's to be, it's always up to me. I would agree. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow night. It's only Tuesday this week. God, I love that. We'll be back tomorrow night, and we're going to be talking a little more about this sense of enhanced humans, the cognitive revolution that we're all in the middle of, and what we can do to guarantee that you and I come out on top. And it begins when we remember that we all possess a potential just this side of infinity. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic evening. Until tomorrow, go be you. Don't forget, you can text us here. Even if the show's off the air, text us at 833-462-3968. Let us know what you're thinking about, or a concept of something that you'd like to see for a show. We'll go ahead and hook you up as well. Thank you all so very much for joining us here at All Natural Being. Good night, everybody.
IPMNation.com.